The cook was fired for theft, and the millionaire asked her a question. Her answer brought him to his knees. Mary took a deep breath as she watched the imposing Harrison mansion rise before her. The white walls gleamed in the morning sunlight, and the large windows, adorned with silk curtains, seemed to gaze at her with curiosity. It was a place that exuded wealth and power, and at the same time, a constant reminder of her own vulnerability. The young single mother, determined to provide a better life for her daughter, Emily, was about to begin a new chapter in her life. She adjusted the scarf she wore to tie back her hair, trying to hide the mess that the wind insisted on creating. With one last glance at the small car she had parked on the sidewalk, where Emily slept peacefully in the back seat, Mary made her way to the front door. As she rang the doorbell, a flutter of nerves accompanied her. It was what she had always wanted. A job that could help support her daughter, but the thought of working for a millionaire made her anxious. The door opened, revealing a tall man with a distinguished appearance and a warm smile. It was John Harrison, the owner of the mansion. He had an air of authority, but also a kindness that felt welcoming. "You must be Mary. Welcome. I'm looking forward to seeing what you can do in the kitchen," he said, extending his hand in a warm greeting. "Thank you, Mr. Harrison. I'm excited to get started," Mary replied, shaking his hand. His grip was firm, and she felt a flicker of hope within her. "I hope I can meet your expectations. I have no doubt that you will. Come, I'll show you where you'll be working," John said, gesturing for her to follow him. As she walked through the mansion, Mary couldn't help but be impressed by the opulence of the place. Crystal chandeliers sparkled, and the walls were adorned with paintings by renowned artists. It was a world that seemed distant from her reality. "This is the kitchen," John said as he opened a wide door. The space was spacious and well lit, equipped with state-of-the-art appliances. "Here, you'll have the freedom to create your own recipes. I want the food to be a memorable experience for my family and guests." Mary looked around, absorbing every detail. "It's wonderful, sir. I'm eager to put my skills to the test," she replied, feeling increasingly excited. "Great. The first meal will be a special dinner next week. I hope you're ready to impress," John said, winking at her. "And don't worry about your daughter. We have a space where she can stay while you work." "That would be amazing, sir. Emily means everything to me, and I wouldn't leave her with just anyone," Mary replied, her heart warming at the idea of having her daughter nearby while she worked. "I understand, and you'll do well to keep that closeness. I believe a mother should always be close to her child," John said, his expression becoming more serious. "Family is the most important thing." The following days flew by. Mary dedicated herself to the kitchen, exploring fresh ingredients and creating dishes that reflected her love and care. She remembered the recipes her own mother had taught her, and with each new dish, she felt more confident. The aroma of homemade food filled the mansion, and soon Mary's name began to be whispered among the staff. One day, while preparing a beef stew with fresh vegetables, John entered the kitchen. "What are you making today, Mary? I can smell it from afar," he exclaimed, a smile illuminating his face. "I'm making a beef stew, sir. I hope you like it," Mary replied, a bit shy as she stirred the pot. "If it tastes as good as it smells, I'm sure it will be a hit," John said, leaning in for a closer look. "You have an incredible talent. I've been thinking about hosting an event to showcase your skills to my friends." Mary was taken aback. "An event? That would be an honor, sir, but I'm not sure I'm ready for something like that." "You're more than ready. Food is a way to connect people, and I want you to be a part of that. Besides, your food is made with love, and that's something everyone can feel," John said, his voice full of sincerity. Mary felt her cheeks warm at the compliment. "Thank you, sir. That means a lot to me. I just want to do my best." "And you are. Keep it up," he said before leaving the kitchen, leaving Mary with a smile on her face and her heart racing. As days turned into weeks, the relationship between Mary and John grew closer. He frequently stopped by the kitchen, praising her dishes and asking about her life. Mary talked about Emily, her day-to-day life, and her aspirations, John listened attentively, showing genuine interest. The connection between them was undeniable, but Mary reminded herself that she was an employee and needed to maintain a certain distance. On a sunny afternoon, while preparing a dessert, Elizabeth, John's wife, walked into the kitchen. She was an elegant woman with a commanding presence, but her expression was cold. "What are you doing, Mary?" she asked, her tone making it clear that she was not there by chance. "I'm making a chocolate cake for dinner tonight, ma'am," Mary replied, trying to stay calm. "I hope you know that what you do here has to be perfect," Elizabeth said, her eyes fixed on Mary. "John is demanding, and I won't allow anyone to tarnish the reputation of our home." Mary felt a shiver run down her spine, but tried not to show it. "I understand, ma'am. I appreciate the opportunity to work here. I'm doing my best." "Better than what? Better than me? You know this kitchen is mine, don't you?" Elizabeth shot back, the tension in the room rising. "Be careful not to overstep your boundaries, Mary." "I'm just doing my job, ma'am. I don't mean to offend you," Mary replied, trying to keep her voice steady. Elizabeth watched her for a moment, as if weighing every word. "Very well then. Just remember who really runs things here," she said before leaving Mary with a mix of relief and discomfort. From that day on, Mary began to notice the growing tension between her and Elizabeth. John's compliments became more frequent, but his wife always seemed like a shadow, ready to confront her at any moment. Mary worked hard to ignore the heavy atmosphere, focusing on her passion for cooking and the love for her daughter. On a gala night, where Mary had prepared an exquisite banquet, the tension between the two women reached a new level. John, proud of his cook, stood up to make a toast. "I am extremely happy to have Mary with us. Your food is not only delicious, but it also brings a special touch that makes everyone feel at home." The guests applauded, but Mary noticed that Elizabeth was pale, her lips pressed into a thin line. Her gaze was icy, and Mary felt a tightness in her chest. "I'm just doing my job," she thought, but deep down, she knew things were about to change. Thus, while the mansion buzzed with laughter and conversation, Mary was filled with a mix of happiness and apprehension. She was finally starting to feel at home, but the shadow of Elizabeth's jealousy and insecurity loomed like a dark cloud, ready to burst over her new life. Elizabeth Harrison watched every move John made with growing unease. Ever since Mary, the new cook, had entered their lives, something had shifted in the atmosphere of the mansion. It was as if Mary's presence illuminated the darkest corners of the house, and that was intolerable for Elizabeth. She, who had always been the center of attention, now found herself overshadowed by Mary's talent and charming simplicity. One morning, as she prepared for a social event at the mansion, Elizabeth decided it was time to observe the dynamics between her husband and the new employee more closely. She discreetly hid behind a column, listening to the laughter and conversations echoing from the kitchen. "Mary, you really outdid yourself this time," John exclaimed, savoring one of Mary's creations. "This soufflé is divine. I've never tasted anything like it." Mary smiled shyly, her eyes lighting up with the compliments. "Thank you, Mr. Harrison. I'm glad you liked it." Elizabeth felt a chill run down her spine at her husband's words of praise. He was so completely absorbed in Mary that he seemed to forget about his own wife. Jealousy began to bubble up inside her, and Elizabeth stepped away, determined not to be just a spectator in this new reality. That night, a dinner was organized in honor of John, and the mansion's kitchen was in full swing. Mary was diligently preparing a wonderful feast, while Elizabeth, in her elegant dress, watched every move the cook made with a look of disguised disdain. "Do you really think you can please everyone with this?" Elizabeth shot, trying to maintain a casual tone. "Are you sure you're not overdoing it?" Mary, surprised by the question, replied cautiously, "I just want to do my best, Mrs. Harrison. I hope everyone will be satisfied." Of course," Elizabeth said, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "After all, it's just your job, isn't it? Don't forget who you are." That last phrase echoed in Mary's mind. She didn't want to be reminded of her subordinate position, but the nervousness began to grow in her chest. Elizabeth was becoming a threatening shadow, and she didn't know how to deal with it. During dinner, while the guests praised Mary's dishes, Elizabeth felt increasingly suffocated by the feeling that she was losing control. When John stood up to make a toast, Elizabeth knew it would be a critical moment. "I want to toast to Mary," John announced, his gaze radiant. "You've brought new life to this house, and your talent is undeniable. May many more dinners like this come." The guests raised their glasses, and Elizabeth felt a wave of anger and humiliation. What should have been a celebration of love and unity had turned into a parade of praises for Mary. Elizabeth's heart raced with jealousy, and she knew she needed to take action. That night, as the guests dispersed and the house returned to silence, Elizabeth decided she could not allow Mary to continue being a threat. She sat in her favorite chair, her mind buzzing with plans. It was imperative that she took action, one that made it clear to everyone that she was the true lady of the mansion. "I can't let this happen," she murmured to herself, her expression turning into a mask of determination. "Mary needs to leave our lives." Days passed, and Elizabeth began to devise a way to expel Mary without raising suspicion. She started observing the cook's habits, noting every little mistake and misstep. During the day, Elizabeth kept herself busy, but at night, she became a shadow, seeking any opportunity she could use against Mary. "Do you think you can maintain this level?" Elizabeth taunted sarcastically, while Mary washed the dishes after yet another successful meal. "Don't forget, the pressure is high here. We don't want a cook who fails when we need her most." Mary, already tired and a bit insecure, replied, "I'm doing my best, Mrs. Harrison. I hope that's enough." Elizabeth merely rolled her eyes, feeling more and more in control of her scheme. The idea that Mary could be responsible for a scandal began to take shape in Elizabeth's mind. It would be easy to frame the cook, especially if she could manage something that would really catch everyone's attention. Finally, on a sunny morning, Elizabeth decided it was time to put her plan into action. She went to the room where the family heirloom, a precious pearl necklace that had always been a symbol of the Harrison family's status, was kept. With a mischievous smile, Elizabeth took the jewelry from its place and hid it in a spot where she knew Mary could easily be accused. Upon returning to the kitchen, Elizabeth found Mary organizing the ingredients for lunch. "Mary," she said, trying to sound casual, "have you seen the pearl necklace that was in the living room? I can't seem to find it." Mary looked a bit confused. "No, Mrs. Harrison, I haven't been to the living room today." Elizabeth just nodded, a satisfied smile forming on her lips. "I hope nothing bad has happened. It's a valuable heirloom, you know." The day went on, and the tension in the mansion began to rise. Elizabeth knew the situation was about to unfold exactly as she had planned. With each compliment John gave Mary, she felt her determination grow, and the moment to act was drawing near. When the jewelry finally disappeared, Elizabeth made sure to be the first to discover the theft. The uproar was immediate, and she didn't miss the chance to suggest that Mary might be involved, knowing that this would cast doubt on the cook's integrity. "How can a new employee have access to the living room? It's concerning," Elizabeth said to John, her voice filled with worry. "Mary was there, wasn't she? Just think about the implications." John, initially skeptical, began to feel the weight of Elizabeth's words. The idea that Mary could be dishonest troubled him. "I can't believe she would do something like that," he protested. But the seed of doubt that Elizabeth had planted began to germinate. "Just consider it, John," she insisted, with a look that seemed to plead for attention. "She is the only one who had recent access to that room. We need to be cautious." Elizabeth was in her element, manipulating and distorting the truth to her advantage. With every word that left her lips, the first seeds of jealousy thrived, and Mary's life began to crumble before her eyes. The mansion, once a welcoming home, was now becoming a battleground, where intrigue and jealousy threatened everything Mary had worked for. Elizabeth, consumed by a mix of jealousy and insecurity, watched the interaction between her husband John and Mary with an increasingly suspicious gaze. To her, every compliment John gave the cook felt like a knife to her heart. John's growing admiration for Mary left her restless, and the idea that a mere cook could steal her husband haunted her. "He has never praised food like this before," Elizabeth murmured to herself as she looked out the window of the elegant parlor, where John and Mary were in the garden, laughing and sharing moments of relaxation. The sun lit up their faces, and Elizabeth felt suffocated by the scene unfolding before her eyes. This can't go on. Determined to regain control of the situation, Elizabeth began to devise a plan. The first step was to find a way to discredit Mary in John's eyes. But how? The idea crept into her mind like a shadow, dark and treacherous. There was a family heirloom, a precious inheritance that had always been kept safe. If she could make everyone believe that Mary had stolen it, it could ruin her reputation and consequently drive John away from her. "That's it," Elizabeth whispered to herself as she looked at her reflection in the mirror. "I have no choice. I need to protect my marriage." With that resolution, Elizabeth began to sketch out the details of her wicked plan. That night, while the house slept, Elizabeth descended the stairs toward the office where the jewel was kept. With a racing heart, she opened the drawer and with a delicate touch took the relic that shone under the moonlight. "No one can know it was me," she thought, hiding the jewel in her bag before returning to her room. In the following days, Elizabeth began to plant the seeds of distrust. She approached some of the household staff, insinuating that Mary was an ambitious person who could easily be tempted by the idea of stealing something so valuable. "I think you should keep an eye on her," she told one of the maids with a disguised smile. "You never know what might happen when someone is desperate." Complicit glances and conspiratorial whispers began to spread through the mansion, while Mary continued to dedicate herself to her work, unaware of the wicked plan being hatched against her. Elizabeth, for her part, was pleased with how her plan was progressing. She knew that if everything went as expected, soon Mary would be expelled from the mansion, along with any possibility of John seeing her as a rival. Finally, the day of the special dinner arrived. Mary had prepared an unforgettable feast with dishes that left all the guests in awe. John, in particular, was radiant, praising Mary loudly. "This food is simply divine, Mary. You truly have an incredible talent," he said, raising his glass in a toast. Elizabeth, watching everything from the table, felt her anger boiling inside her. When dinner came to an end, Elizabeth decided it was time to act. With a look of surprise, she stood up and declared, "Where is the family jewel? I put it here in the living room before dinner." The uproar began instantly, and everyone was filled with a sense of confusion and concern. John, still under the influence of wine and compliments, frowned. "Elizabeth, calm down. Let's check where you left it," he said, trying to soothe her. "But what if Mary stole it?" Elizabeth shot back with a look of shock. "She's the only one who had access to the room. You can't deny that, John." The atmosphere in the room grew tense. Mary, who until then had been happy and fulfilled by the recognition of her work, felt the weight of Elizabeth's words. I don't know what you're talking about," she replied, her voice as shaky as her heart. "I would never steal anything." Elizabeth, seeing doubt begin to spread among the guests, intensified her act. "It's a theft. The jewel is missing, and we have to find out who did it." Her determination seemed unshakable, and as everyone looked at Mary, Elizabeth felt she was getting closer to her goal. John looked at Mary confused, and he didn't want to believe that his cook, the woman he admired so much, could be involved in something so disgraceful. "Mary, do you have any explanation?" he asked, but the pain was already evident in his gaze. "I don't know anything, John. I'm just a cook. How could I do something like that?" Mary said, gripping her hands tightly, trying to keep her composure under the pressure. The silence in the room was deafening, and each second felt like an eternity. Elizabeth, taking advantage of Mary's vulnerability, continued to press. "You need to understand, John. Our family's reputation is at stake. If Mary really did this, we need to act quickly." With every word that left her lips, Mary's panic grew. The injustice of the situation left her paralyzed, and she tried to find a way to defend herself without appearing desperate. John, unsure of what to do, began to feel that the situation was spiraling out of control. He tried to calm the situation, but Elizabeth's voice was the only one that stood out in the room. "Please, let's resolve this calmly. Mary, if you didn't do anything, you have nothing to fear," he said, trying to give Mary a glimmer of hope. But Elizabeth, now at the height of her manipulation, was not willing to let the truth emerge. "Let's check the rooms and the kitchen. If she really has nothing to hide, she won't mind going through this," she said with a triumphant smile. Mary's heart sank upon hearing those words. What should have been a celebration of her hard work was now turning into a nightmare. With the pressure mounting, she realized she was about to lose everything she had built. And as the guests began to murmur and whisper, Elizabeth felt increasingly confident that her plan was about to come to fruition. "I am not a thief. I am just a mother struggling to raise my daughter," Mary exclaimed with tears in her eyes. But even those words could not break the web of lies that Elizabeth had woven. The house, once vibrant with laughter and joy, was now becoming an emotional battlefield where truth and lies mingled in a cruel dance. The Harrison mansion was in an uproar. The disappearance of the family heirloom, an old pearl necklace of priceless sentimental value, caused a commotion that reverberated throughout the imposing residence. The staff exchanged nervous glances as Elizabeth, John's wife, paced back and forth, feigning a concern she did not feel. Inside her mind, an evil plan began to take shape, and she was determined to carry it out. Mary, the new cook, was in the kitchen, oblivious to the turmoil. Preparing a special dish for dinner, she focused on every detail, while the loud voices and arguments from outside seemed distant. However, the tense atmosphere soon reached her. Elizabeth entered the kitchen, her expression heavy with indignation. "Mary, have you seen the pearl necklace?" Elizabeth asked, her tone mixing anger and desperation. "No, ma'am, I have no idea where it might be," Mary replied, washing her hands in hot water, not understanding what was happening. Elizabeth stepped closer, her dominating presence making Mary's heart race. "You are the only one who had access to the room where the necklace was kept. Do you think that's just a coincidence?" Mary looked at her, confused. "I only prepared dinner and didn't go into the jewelry room. I don't know what happened, but I'm not responsible for it." "You may not be responsible, but everyone in the house is starting to think you might have something to do with the disappearance," Elizabeth said, her voice low and cutting. "People talk, Mary. You need to take care of your reputation." Mary felt the weight of Elizabeth's words. She knew she had earned John's respect because of her cooking skills, but now, with this accusation, everything was at stake. "Please, don't involve me in this. I just want to do my job and take care of my daughter." Elizabeth smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. "Take care of your daughter? What if you get fired for theft? What will happen to Emily?" Mary swallowed hard, the anguish settling in her chest. "I didn't steal anything. I don't know what happened to the jewelry, but I have nothing to do with it." Elizabeth stepped back, but her malevolent expression did not leave her. "I think you should prepare yourself. The house is full of eyes, and who knows, maybe the truth will come to light." Meanwhile, John was in his office trying to understand the situation. He had heard the rumors and the commotion in the house, but he couldn't believe that Mary, the woman he had begun to admire for her skills, could be involved in something so horrendous. He stood up, determined to uncover the truth. "Elizabeth, what's going on? Why is the house in such an uproar?" John asked upon finding his wife. "John, the necklace has disappeared, and everyone is saying that the only person who had access to it was Mary," Elizabeth replied, her dramatic tone trying to convince John of the gravity of the situation. "Mary? That doesn't make sense. She's a great cook and a devoted mother. Why would she do something like that?" John argued, feeling an increasing discomfort. "Because she wants to infiltrate our lives, John. You praise her all the time, and I'm starting to think it's gone to her head," Elizabeth retorted, her voice laced with disdain. "We need to be rational. We can't accuse someone without proof." "I will speak to her," John decided, his determination firm. He headed to the kitchen where he found Mary, still looking worried. She seemed paler than usual, and he could see that the tension was affecting her deeply. "Mary, we need to talk," he said, his voice gentle. Mary turned to him, her eyes filled with despair. "Mr. Harrison, I didn't steal the jewelry. I don't know where it is. I just want to do my job and take care of my daughter." "I know, Mary, but the situation is complicated. Elizabeth, she's pressuring me." "I need you to tell me the truth." "What happened?" John asked, trying to remain calm. "I don't know anything, I swear. I was in the kitchen the whole time. I was preparing dinner," Mary insisted, her voice trembling. John hesitated, feeling the weight of the accusation hanging over her. "I want to believe you, but people are talking. We need to clear this up." "I understand, but you need to know that I'm not a criminal. I have nothing to gain from this. I just work to support my daughter," she said, the anguish in her tone coming through. "Mary, I don't want you to worry. I will investigate this. I promise I will find out what really happened," John assured her, his voice filled with sincerity. "Thank you, Mr. Harrison. I just want the truth. And please take care of Emily. She is all I have," Mary implored, tears forming in her eyes. John nodded, but his mind was filled with doubts. He couldn't let Elizabeth dominate the situation, but it was hard to ignore his wife's insinuations. He knew he needed to act quickly to protect Mary and discover the truth behind the theft. Meanwhile, Elizabeth watched the scene from a distance, a satisfied smile on her face. The plan was in motion, and she was determined to see Mary out of their lives once and for all. The tension continued to rise in the mansion, and with each passing day, it became a nerve-wracking battle between John's love for Mary and Elizabeth's cunning manipulation. What should have been a home was turning into a battleground, where loyalty, love, and truth were about to be tested in a devastating way. The Harrison mansion was in a state of growing agitation. The atmosphere, once marked by smiles and cheerful conversations, was now enveloped in heavy tension. The dinner prepared by Mary, the new cook, had been a resounding success, but what should have been a moment of celebration had turned into an emotional battlefield. Elizabeth, John's wife, could no longer hide her discomfort. Every compliment John directed at Mary made her feel as if a piece of her heart was being torn away. "You really exceeded expectations, Mary," John said, his eyes shining as he savored the dish she had just prepared. "These flavors are simply divine. I've never tasted anything like it." Mary smiled shyly, her heart warmed by the praise. She felt grateful to have a job that not only helped her support her daughter, Emily, but also allowed her to express her passion for cooking. However, the joy on her face did not go unnoticed by Elizabeth, who was watching the scene with an increasingly angry expression. "Yes, really, the food is excellent," Elizabeth interjected, her voice revealing an acidic tone. "But you know, John, what really matters is that the food is made with love. It's not just about the ingredients." Elizabeth's gaze was icy, and Mary felt a shiver run down her spine. Despite the hostile atmosphere that was taking hold, she maintained her composure. "Thank you, Mrs. Harrison. I always strive to do my best for you." Elizabeth turned to John, trying to divert his attention. "Darling, don't you think it's time we called the next waiter? I don't want this young cook to feel too comfortable here." John's brow furrowed, sensing that something was wrong with that interaction. "Elizabeth, please don't be like that. Mary is a great professional and deserves to be recognized for her work." John's words only intensified Elizabeth's fury. She felt her position being threatened, and with it, her self-confidence. Jealousy consumed her, and she needed to act to restore her position of power. That night, while everyone retreated to their rooms, Elizabeth stayed awake, her mind buzzing with plans and ideas. She couldn't allow Mary to continue gaining John's admiration. "I need to act before it's too late," she whispered to herself, determined. In the days that followed, Elizabeth began to observe Mary more closely. She noted every movement, every word that came out of Mary's mouth. The young single mother, with her gentle look and caring way of handling food, seemed more and more like a potential threat. Elizabeth devised a cruel plan, a strategy she believed could not only eliminate Mary, but also restore order in her life. If I can make everyone believe she is a thief, I won't just get rid of her, but I'll also tarnish her reputation forever, Elizabeth thought as she walked through the mansion. The family jewel, a relic that had been passed down through generations, became the target of her plan. She knew that if she could steal it and plant the blame on Mary, she could finally rid herself of the cook who had become so popular among John's guests. On a quiet night, when everyone was asleep, Elizabeth sneaked to the safe where the jewel was kept. With a racing heart and dark determination, she opened the safe and took out the precious piece. "Now, I just need to hide this somewhere I can find it, later," she murmured as she concealed the jewel in a strategic location. The next morning, the commotion began. The jewel had disappeared, and Elizabeth, with a facade of false innocence, started insinuating that Mary might be involved. "It's strange that the only person who had access to the room is the new cook," she declared, her voice full of concern. "Don't you think so, John?" John, still reeling from the news of the theft, didn't know what to think. "Mary? She seems like an honest person. No, it can't be. But darling, think about it. If she is really so talented, why would she be working here?" "Sometimes people have hidden motives," Elizabeth insisted, skillfully manipulating the situation. Mary, hearing the insinuations, felt her heart race. Anguish grew in her chest as she tried to defend herself. "I swear I'm not the thief. I would never do something like that. I just want to take care of my daughter." However, Mary's words were in vain. Elizabeth had already planted the seed of doubt in John's mind. He looked at Mary, confused and distressed. "Mary, you need to understand that this is serious. If there's any truth in what Elizabeth is saying—" "No, John, you can't believe that. I would never do something that would jeopardize my job and my daughter's safety," Mary exclaimed, her voice trembling. But John no longer knew what to think. He was torn between loyalty to the woman he loved and trust in Mary, who had shown herself to be so helpful and dedicated. Elizabeth's pressure was relentless, and little by little, she was shaping John's perception. The situation escalated rapidly to an unsustainable point. Elizabeth, with calculated coldness, convinced John that the only solution to avoid a bigger scandal was to fire Mary. "We need to act now, John. If this gets out in the press, it will be a disaster for the family name. The only way to protect our reputation is to remove her," she argued, with a conviction that made her even more convincing. John, in his confusion, finally caved to the pressure. "If you think it's best, then maybe you're right," he said, his voice hesitant. Mary was devastated by the news. "Please don't do this. I'm innocent. I just want to work and take care of my daughter." But without a solid alibi and with Elizabeth's mounting pressure, Mary found herself forced to leave the mansion. The humiliation was unbearable. As she carried Emily in her arms, tears streamed down her face. John watched her leave, a lump in his throat, not fully understanding the gravity of the situation, but feeling that something was deeply wrong. Anguish consumed him, but he felt powerless against Elizabeth's manipulation. "Mary, wait!" he shouted, but it was too late. She was already out of the house, disappearing into the night, taking with her not only the pain of injustice, but also a part of John's heart. The Harrison mansion was in a state of great turmoil. The disappearance of the valuable family jewel had created a heavy and tense atmosphere among the residents. Mary, who until then had enjoyed a harmonious work environment, now found herself surrounded by murmurs and suspicious glances. The beautiful cook, who had always been well regarded by everyone, had now become the target of accusations. Meanwhile, Elizabeth, with her facade of false innocence, watched every move with a subtle smile on her lips, as if she were satisfied with the despair that Mary found herself in. That morning, John sat at his breakfast table, the expression of concern etched on his face, He looked at his cup of coffee, but his mind was far away, caught in a whirlwind of conflicting feelings. The last thing he wanted was to believe that Mary could be capable of stealing something so precious. But the constant pressure from Elizabeth, who insisted that Mary was the only possible culprit, weighed heavily on his shoulders. "John, you need to take action," Elizabeth said, her voice melodious but laden with disguised tension. "We can't let this drag on any longer. What will people think of us? We need to restore order in this house." "But I can't just accuse Mary without proof, Elizabeth," John replied, looking into his wife's eyes. "She has been an exemplary employee. Do you really believe she could do this?" Elizabeth paused, her gaze becoming intense. "And if it's not her, then who? Do you think the longtime employees would have the courage to do something like this?" "Mary is the only new one here, John. Think about it. I believe she would do anything to ensure her own safety and that of her daughter." John felt a knot form in his stomach. He knew Elizabeth was clinging to his insecurity, trying to convince him he was right. "We need to find out the truth first. We can't act on impulse." Morning wore on, and the atmosphere in the mansion became increasingly unbearable. Mary was in the kitchen preparing lunch, but her heart was heavy. Every sound in the house seemed to echo in her mind, and she couldn't stop wondering how everything had come to this point. The accusations were devastating, and even though she knew she was innocent, the doubt lodged in John's mind made everything more painful. When Mary heard footsteps approaching, she already knew it was Elizabeth. John's wife had a particular way of walking, as if she were always on the hunt, ready to pounce. Mary's heart raced and she tried to focus on her task. She hoped Elizabeth wouldn't bother her, but her hopes were soon dashed. "Mary," Elizabeth began, with a tone that seemed sweet, but carried a sharp intent. "Have you thought about what might have happened to the jewel? Sometimes things disappear when you least expect it." Mary stopped and turned slowly. I don't know what you're talking about, Elizabeth. I'm not responsible for what happened to the jewel." "Of course not," Elizabeth said, forcing a smile. "But you must understand that John is worried. We all are. That's what happens when there's distrust in the air." "Distrust?" Mary repeated, her heart tightening. "I haven't done anything wrong. You have to believe me." Elizabeth crossed her arms, watching Mary with a look of disdain. "I believe you should be more concerned about your position here. A single woman with a small child. It's not easy to get a job, and the last thing you want is to be seen as a thief." Mary felt a chill run down her spine. She remembered the struggles she had faced to get that job and how much she had fought to maintain her dignity while raising Emily. "I'm not asking you to believe me, Elizabeth. I just want you to know that I'm innocent." "Then prove it," Elizabeth taunted, her tone acidic. "Prove that you have nothing to hide. After all, you're the only one who had access to the room where the jewel was." Mary didn't know what to say. Elizabeth's words echoed in her mind, and the pressure was unbearable. She felt cornered and desperate. I don't know how I can prove that. I just did my job." Elizabeth shot a significant look toward the kitchen, as if assessing every detail. "Maybe you should think about how you behaved on the night the jewel disappeared. What were you doing? Is there anyone who can confirm where you were?" Mary hesitated. Although she had spent most of the night at home with Emily, there was no one who could corroborate her story. "I was at home with my daughter. I have no way to prove it, but I'm not a criminal, Elizabeth." "If that were true, you wouldn't be so nervous, Mary," Elizabeth replied, her smile turning sharper. "What's going to happen now is that you need to prepare yourself. John can't protect you forever. He loves the truth, and the truth will prevail." The conversation left her in a state of confusion and panic. What more could she do? Mary felt an overwhelming weight in her chest. The thought of losing her job, the only source of income for her and Emily, was terrifying. She decided she needed to find a way to defend herself, but she didn't know where to start. When lunchtime arrived, the atmosphere at the table was tense. John tried to focus on his food, but Elizabeth's words still resonated in his mind. He looked at Mary, who was serving the dishes, and noticed she seemed paler than usual. "Mary, are you okay?" he asked, his voice carrying a tone of concern. She looked at him, her eyes filled with emotion. I'm fine, just tired, sir. Work has been tough lately." "Do you need any help? Can I do something?" John offered, genuinely concerned. Elizabeth, however, seized the opportunity to interrupt. "John, you can't be so naive. The situation here is serious. We need to find out who is really involved in this." Mary felt a wave of despair. "Please don't believe me. I'm innocent. I would never do something like this," she pleaded, looking directly at John. He hesitated, his gaze shifting between Mary and Elizabeth. "I want to believe you, Mary. But the pressure is mounting, and we need answers." The tension at the table was palpable. The weight of Elizabeth's words seemed to hang in the air, and Mary felt like she was about to be engulfed by a storm she couldn't control. The injustice consumed her, and with every passing second, the possibility of being seen as guilty tormented her. I'm going to excuse myself," Mary finally said, her voice trembling. "I need some time to think." She left the table, leaving John and Elizabeth in a heavy silence. As she walked to the kitchen, tears began to slide down her face. What would she do now? The life she had built was crumbling, and the only person who could help her seemed hesitant. The weight of the accusations and the pressure of the situation were immense, and Mary desperately needed to find a way out. James Parker was sitting in his office, surrounded by files and notes, when the phone rang. It was John Harrison, his client, who sounded increasingly distressed. The investigation into the theft of the Harrison family jewel was complicating, and the pressure on Mary was only increasing. James knew he needed to act quickly to clarify the situation. "James, I can't take this tension at home anymore. Mary isn't a thief, I feel it," John said, his voice heavy with frustration. "I understand, John. I'm doing my best to find out the truth. What I can tell you is that I haven't found any concrete evidence linking Mary to the theft," James replied, trying to calm the millionaire. "The problem is that Elizabeth is so convinced that Mary is guilty that anything I say feels futile. What do you suggest?" James pondered for a moment. He knew that to find the truth, he needed to look beyond the theft. What else could have happened in that house? While he was thinking, an idea popped into his mind. "John, what if I dig deeper into Mary's past? There might be something that helps us understand better who she is and how she came to you." "That makes sense. Finding out more about her could give us a different perspective. Do whatever it takes. I'm counting on you." With renewed determination, James began to investigate Mary's life. He talked to the mansion staff, collected information, and even made some discreet visits to the neighborhood where Mary lived. As he analyzed every detail, he began to realize that there was something special about the young cook. The neighbor's words were always filled with admiration and affection for her dedication to her daughter, and that only reinforced the idea that she couldn't be involved in a crime. After a few days of research, James decided it was time for a different approach. He remembered a chest he had seen during one of his visits to the mansion. In fact, it was an old chest that seemed to have not been opened for years. James recalled the old maid mentioning that the chest contained sentimental items from the Harrison family. Intrigued, he decided he needed to take a look. That afternoon, while the mansion was silent, James headed to the basement. He found the chest leaning against a corner covered in dust. Carefully, he opened it and began to pull out the objects inside. There were old letters, clothes, and some faded photographs. One of them caught his attention. A young woman with long hair and a radiant smile. Next to her was a man. It was John in his younger years. James held the photograph, feeling an instant connection. But what intrigued him even more was the resemblance of the young woman in the photo to Mary. The same delicate features, the expressive eyes. He remembered hearing the staff commenting on Mary's beauty and how she resembled someone from a distant past. He needed to know more about the woman in the photo. "Who is this?" James murmured to himself as he examined the image. He decided he needed more information. With the photo in hand, He returned to his office and began researching the history of the Harrison family. After a few hours of intense research, he found records mentioning the name Helen, the young woman in the photograph. Helen had disappeared without a trace after giving birth to a daughter. James's heart raced. What was going through his mind seemed like a movie plot, but he couldn't ignore the evidence. James decided he needed to confront John with his findings. He knew the truth would be shocking, but it could also be the key to resolving the situation with Mary. The next day, he met John at a cafe near the mansion. The atmosphere was calm, but the tension was palpable. "James, did you find anything?" John asked expectantly. "I found something that might be very relevant, John," James replied, looking into the millionaire's eyes. "I found a photograph of Helen, your former girlfriend." "Helen? What does this have to do with Mary?" John frowned. "Look at this photo," James said, handing the image to John. John's expression changed instantly upon seeing the face of the woman he hadn't seen in years. It's her," John exclaimed, his voice trembling. "But what does this have to do with Mary?" "Look closely at this photo, then look at Mary. The similarities are undeniable." James paused, watching John absorb the information. "I started investigating and found out that Helen had a daughter, but she disappeared shortly after the birth. There are no clear records of what happened to that child, but—" "Are you insinuating that Mary is my daughter?" John interrupted, stunned. "It's a possibility. Records show that Helen was pregnant at the time of her disappearance. If Mary has any connection to Helen, that would mean she is your biological daughter." John fell silent, processing the information. The idea that his life was about to change completely left him stunned. This is crazy, James. I never knew what happened to Helen. And if Mary is really my daughter, I made a terrible mistake by firing her." "Yes, and now we need to find out the truth. If Mary is your daughter, we need to find her and clarify this situation. She deserves to know who she is and where she belongs." John stared out the window, lost in thought. He remembered moments from his youth, how full of life Helen had been, and how he had loved that woman. Now, fate seemed to be giving him a second chance to fix a mistake he hadn't even realized he had made. "James, we need to find her. I can't let this mistake continue. Mary needs to know the truth, and I need to find a way to make this right." James nodded, pleased with John's determination. He knew the road ahead would be difficult, but the prospect of a new life for Mary and for John motivated him. "Let's start looking for her. As soon as you're ready, we can approach her and explain everything. The truth may be painful, but it's the only way to resolve this situation." John took a deep breath, feeling a mix of fear and hope. He knew that the conversation with Mary wouldn't be easy, but he needed to do it. He needed to fight for his daughter and the chance for a future he never had the opportunity to live. James Parker was sitting in his office, surrounded by piles of documents and notes. The smell of fresh coffee lingered in the air, and the soft morning sunlight illuminated the room, creating a conducive environment for reflection. He had spent weeks investigating the disappearance of the jewel, and, more importantly, the situation involving Mary and the Harrison family. Each new piece of information he collected seemed to weave together into a complex web, revealing connections that had previously seemed distant and disconnected. James looked at the old photograph of Helen he had found in the mansion's basement. It was a black and white image of a young woman, with a radiant smile and eyes full of life. The resemblance between her and Mary was undeniable. With his heart racing, he picked up the photo and examined it closely. Noticing the traits that seemed to have been passed from mother to daughter, this discovery was more than just a mere coincidence. It was a glimpse into a past that was deeply intertwined with the present. The door opened slowly, and John Harrison entered, his expression loaded with expectation and anxiety. "James, you called me?" he asked, his tone betraying his agitation. "Yes, John, we need to talk," James replied, gesturing for John to sit across from him. "I found some things that could change everything." John's expression grew serious, and he settled into the chair, leaning forward. "What is it about?" he asked, his voice low, almost a whisper. James hesitated for a moment, searching for the right words. "Do you remember the photograph I found in the basement? The one of Helen?" "Yes, of course." "What's wrong with it?" John asked, confusion mingling with his concern. "It's not just any photo. The resemblance between Helen and Mary is striking. I started to investigate, and based on old documents I found, it seems that Mary might be your daughter," James said, the last word hanging in the air like a weight. John fell silent, his eyes wide, breath suspended. "What are you saying? That's impossible!" he exclaimed, a mix of disbelief and shock. "I know it sounds crazy, but the evidence is piling up. Helen disappeared after giving birth to a daughter. No one ever knew what happened to her, and now, with Mary appearing in your life, everything starts to make sense," James explained, trying to convey the gravity of the situation. "But how is that possible? I never knew Helen had a daughter. What happened to her?" John asked, his voice now tinged with desperation. "That's something we need to explore together. However, the clues I've found show that Mary might be the key to understanding this whole mystery. If she really is your daughter, it changes everything," James said, watching John process the revelation. "If Mary is my daughter, she doesn't deserve what happened to her," John murmured, his eyes lost in some distant memory. "I can't believe Elizabeth could do something so cruel. I need to make this right." James nodded, realizing he was facing a man tormented by guilt and the pain of an unresolved past. "You need to find Mary and tell her the truth. She deserves to know who you really are and what happened. But be careful, John. Elizabeth is still a threat." "I won't let her hurt her again. I can't allow that to happen," John said, determination growing in his voice. He knew the journey ahead would be difficult, but he was determined to do what was right. "I can help you find her. Together, we can clarify this situation and bring Mary back home," James offered, his voice firm and resolute. "Yes, let's do this. I won't let fear stop me from seeking the truth. Mary is my daughter, and I let her go once. I can't do that again," John replied, rising from the chair with renewed determination. James gathered his notes and began organizing the documents he had collected. "Let's make a plan. We need to act quickly before Elizabeth has a chance to interfere again." "Yes, I'm ready. Where do you think Mary might be now?" John asked, his face lighting up with renewed hope. "Her friends mentioned that she often goes to a small cafe in town where she likes to spend some time." "It's a good starting point," James replied, closing the folder and standing up. "Then let's go. We can't waste any time," John said, determined to find Mary and unmask the truth that had been hidden for so long. As they left the office, James cast an encouraging glance at John. He knew that the journey ahead could be filled with challenges, but the search for truth and reconciliation was essential for both of them. They were not just looking for Mary, but also for the chance to right the wrongs of the past and build a future worthy of the love and connection they had lost. As they drove to the cafe, John felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders, but also a spark of hope. He was about to reclaim the daughter he didn't know he had, and with that, the opportunity to redeem not just himself, but also Mary. He knew that the conversation they would have could change everything, and the idea of finally reuniting with her filled him with a mix of anxiety and expectation. "James, if Mary really is my daughter, what do I say to her? How can I explain all of this?" John asked, his voice trembling slightly. "You must be honest, John. Talk about your love for Helen, about how circumstances separated you from Mary, and about how much you regret not being present in her life." "The truth is always the best way," James replied, his words firm and encouraging. "Yes, you're right. I just hope she can forgive me," John said, the knots in his stomach tightening as they approached the cafe. "Trust me, John. The love between a father and daughter is a powerful thing. If Mary feels your sincerity, it might be the first step toward reconciliation," James said as he parked the car. John took a deep breath, his determination renewed. He knew that what he was about to do could change the course of both of their lives, and he was willing to face any storm that came his way. With his heart racing and his mind filled with questions and hopes, he prepared to enter the cafe and seek the truth that had always been within reach. John Harrison was in a state of agitation, his heart pounding in his chest as he prepared to confront Elizabeth. The mansion, once a symbol of status and wealth, now felt like a labyrinth of lies and distrust. After so many revelations, he could no longer ignore what he had discovered. The truth about Mary and her connection to Helen was not just a matter of paternity, but also of justice. He took a deep breath, trying to calm himself, but anger and disappointment consumed him. "Elizabeth," he called, his voice firm, but with a touch of sadness. He found her in the living room where they often gathered to discuss family plans. She was sitting on the couch, seemingly calm, but her eyes betrayed a hidden nervousness. "John, you look shaken," she said, trying to maintain her composure. "What happened?" He did not let her expression deceive him. "I found out the truth about Mary," he declared, his voice steady. "And I know you are behind all of this." Elizabeth paled, her hands tightening around the teacup in front of her. "What do you mean by that?" "You know very well what I'm talking about," John continued, moving closer to her. "The stolen jewelry, the accusations against Mary. It was all part of your plan. You used her as a bargaining chip to protect your position in our lives." "That's insane," Elizabeth exclaimed, standing up abruptly. "Mary is just a cook. You're letting your emotions and this strange connection you have with her cloud your judgment." "She is my daughter, Elizabeth," John shouted, the revelation exploding like thunder between them. The silence that followed weighed like lead. "Mary is my biological daughter, the result of my love for Helen." Elizabeth stepped back, her expression shifting from indignation to a mix of fear and surprise. "You can't be serious." "I'm very serious," John replied, his voice now more controlled but still filled with pain. James Parker, the detective, found evidence. He located documents linking Mary to Helen. "You knew she was my daughter and still chose to destroy her." "I couldn't lose you, John," Elizabeth shot back, the mask of calm finally slipping. "You don't understand. I have always been your wife, the mother of your daughter. Mary was a threat. I did what was necessary to protect our family." "Protection?" John laughed, but there was no humor in his laugh. "You protected nothing. You destroyed an innocent life out of your selfishness. Mary is not a threat. She is part of me, of my story, and now also part of yours. How could you do this?" "She's not the only one who can be affected by this," Elizabeth said, her voice now lower, almost a whisper. "You can't just ignore what I did. We have a life together, John. A family." "A family built on lies and betrayals," he retorted, frustration rising. "You betrayed me in a way I never imagined. I can't live with you knowing you were capable of trying to destroy my daughter's life." But what if I change?" Elizabeth pleaded, her voice choking, tears beginning to form in her eyes. "I can do better. We can fix this, together." John shook his head, feeling the anguish in his chest. "There's no way to fix this, Elizabeth. What you did is unforgivable. You not only hurt Mary, but you also hurt me. I can't allow you to continue causing pain. You need to leave my life." "You can't kick me out," she yelled, anger now surfacing. "I am your wife. I am Elizabeth Harrison." "Not for much longer," John replied, his voice firm and resolute. "I can't live with this shadow over us anymore. What happened between us no longer exists. You will have to go." Elizabeth looked at him, disbelief taking over her face. "And what are you going to do? Let her come here. Take what is ours? After everything I've done for you?" "You did that for yourself, Elizabeth," John said, without hesitation. "I'm no longer willing to let your actions define our life. You need to go. Now." He turned away, determined, and began to leave the room. But Elizabeth, in a last-ditch effort, ran to him, placing her hand on his arm. Please, John. Think of the consequences. This decision will change everything." He looked at her, the pain in his eyes visible. "I've already thought about it, and that's why I'm doing this. It's over, Elizabeth. I can't and won't stand by your side." With one last look of anger and despair, Elizabeth pulled her hand away and let herself fall onto the sofa, her fall seeming to symbolize the collapse of everything she had built. "You're going to regret this," she threatened, but her voice faltered, and the fragility of her demeanor was evident. "No, I won't," John replied, leaving the room. He felt the weight of his decision, but also a growing sense of relief. It was time to break free from the chains that bound him to a past filled with lies and betrayals. He could no longer live in the shadow of what Elizabeth had done. As he walked through the halls of the mansion, each step echoed in his mind. He no longer wanted to be a hostage to a relationship that had become toxic. The truth about Mary and her connection to Helen was now as clear as day, and he couldn't allow Elizabeth to continue interfering in his life or in his daughter's life. When John reached the office, he sat heavily in the chair, his mind still spinning from the intensity of the conversation. The implications of his actions were immense, but he knew he had made the right decision. Whatever happened next, he was prepared to face it. He needed to find Mary and make things right. The journey to restore justice and truth had begun, and he would not rest until every piece of the puzzle was solved. He was determined to correct the mistakes of the past and to protect Mary and Emily at all costs, even if it meant facing the storm that was to come. John walked nervously through the streets, his mind a whirlwind of thoughts. There was so much he needed to say to Mary, but how would she react? He knew that the revelation of his paternity could be a devastating shock. At the same time, he could no longer hide the truth. What had happened to Mary and the injustice she had suffered haunted him. The image of his daughter, helpless and struggling to support little Emily, followed him with every step. Upon arriving at the small apartment where Mary now lived, he hesitated for a moment, taking a deep breath before ringing the doorbell. Mary opened the door, her expression of surprise quickly turning to suspicion. "What are you doing here, John?" She crossed her arms over her chest, trying to appear strong, but her gaze betrayed a mix of curiosity and pain. "Mary, I need to talk to you. It's about the jewel, about everything that happened," he began, feeling the weight of responsibility in his words. "I don't want to hear your excuses, John. You fired me without a second thought, and now, what do you have to say?" Her tone was cutting, but there was an underlying sadness that John couldn't ignore. I didn't know what was happening. Elizabeth manipulated me. She set this all up out of jealousy. I couldn't see the truth until now," he explained, his voice trembling. "But that's not all. There's something else you need to know." Mary raised an eyebrow, skeptical. "More than this? What could be worse than treating me like a criminal?" John took a deep breath, deciding that there was no more time to waste. "Mary, you are not just a talented cook. You are my daughter. Helen, the woman I loved, was your mother. You are the daughter I thought I had lost forever." Silence settled between them, heavy and oppressive. Mary looked at him, her eyes widening in disbelief. "What are you saying? This is absurd. I am just Mary. It can't be true." "I have proof." James, the private detective, found records and an old photo. "The resemblance between you two is undeniable." I didn't know. But now that I've discovered it, I can't let you believe that everything that happened is true." "You don't deserve this," John pleaded, his voice nearly breaking. Mary shook her head, confused. "So you're saying I'm the daughter of a woman who disappeared? Why didn't you tell me this before? Why did you let me suffer?" "I didn't know, Mary. I thought she was dead, that I would never see her again. I loved her, and when she disappeared, my world fell apart. I didn't know you existed until now. And when I realized, my heart broke at the thought of what you went through," he said, emotion overflowing. She looked down at the floor, struggling to process everything. "So, you fired me because of Elizabeth, and now you're here telling me I'm your daughter? How can I believe you?" "Because I am your father, Mary. I want to make this right. I want to bring you back into our family, so that you and Emily can have what you deserve. I want you to know that you should never have been treated that way, John replied, his eyes now filled with determination. Mary looked up, tears starting to form. What if this is all a lie? What if you're just trying to feel better about sending me away? If I were trying to feel better, I wouldn't have come here, would I? I'm here to fix things, not to make them worse. You are my daughter, and I want you to be part of my life again. You and Emily have a home at the mansion, where you always should have been, he said, the sincerity in his voice palpable. Mary's expression began to change slowly, distrust giving way to cautious hope. Are you serious? Can I go back to the mansion? And Emily, what do you mean by home? Yes, Mary. The mansion is yours too. Elizabeth can't hurt you anymore. I've kicked her out. What she did is unacceptable. Now I want you to come home. Let's rebuild our family, I promise, John declared, the fervor in his words reflecting the urgency of his message. Mary hesitated, her heart pounding. What if you change your mind? What if Elizabeth tries to come back? I don't want to live in fear of being kicked out again. I won't let that happen. I will protect you and Emily no matter what it takes. Let's put an end to this story. I can't erase what happened, but I can ensure that nothing like that happens again. You deserve to be happy, John assured, his eyes steady on hers. Mary looked at little Emily, who was playing on the living room floor, oblivious to the intense conversation between them. The desire to provide a better life for her daughter began to overshadow her insecurities. She took a deep breath, stepping toward John. If you're really telling the truth, then I want to believe you, but it's going to take time. I need time to process all of this. I understand, and I'll be here for whatever you need. Let's take it one step at a time. The important thing is that we're together now, he replied, a cautious smile appearing on his face. Mary nodded slowly, her mind still spinning with the revelation. Then let's try. Let's see what the future holds for us. But please, John, don't let me down again. I promise, Mary, I won't let you or Emily down. We will build a new life, a new story, he affirmed, relief washing over him. With a new understanding between them, John and Mary came together, ready to face the challenges ahead. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but together, they were determined to rebuild what had been lost, one step at a time.